meeting of the Reading Consortium. Okay, let me do that again. Hold on one second. I also just realized that I did not have my sound on, so you could probably hear me, but now I can hear you. All right, so welcome everyone to the February 10th meeting of the Reading Consortium for Educational Equity. Very nice to see a lot of faces or pictures of faces. And I think we have a pretty robust agenda tonight, but hopefully one will be able to, you know, to get through pretty efficiently as well, which we always strive to do and respect everyone's time. So because we have our quorum, I think we are all set to dig in. And Matt, did you want to say anything before we get started?
Nope.
Okay, cool. All right. Sorry, go ahead, Kelly. You can keep advancing the slides. As you know, we have our norms that we do in all of our meetings. So we ask that if you're not actively participating, keep yourself on mute so that we can hear whoever is. You can certainly utilize the chat function to ask questions. And as you may have noted, we are recording. This may be posted for public view. And instead of doing our full on roll call, which we'll do when we actually take a formal vote on an item, we would ask that you note that who you are and your affiliation in the chat so that everyone can see and we can mark you present. I do know that Senator Lopez is on his phone, so he probably can't do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on his behalf, Kelly, as well as myself. So we'll just give a couple minutes for folks to go ahead and note that they are here by chat if they can. And if you can't do that, then just sort of raise your voice so that we know that you're here.
Hi, Kelly. This is Tika Hernsack. I'm driving, so I can't type in the chat right now, but I should be to my computer in about 15 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Tika.
I'll note her in the chat as well. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is go ahead and approve our minutes from the last meeting. So you should have received those. I did see that Haley sent those out to everyone. So hopefully you got a chance to glance over those. And at this point, I would just be looking for a motion to approve our prior meeting minutes and a second. And any member can make those, so don't be shy.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, I heard Matt make the motion. I heard Maria second them. And Kelly, did you want to do a full roll call or just a show of approval?
I think we just do a show of approval.
Okay, all in favor, say or indicate aye. Give us a thumbs up, a wave, say it out loud.
Aye.
Chuck just voted for everyone.
Hi.
Great. Anyone opposed to or abstaining from, well, let's say anyone opposed to approving the minutes, please make that known. Hearing none. Did we have any abstentions? No. Okay, great. Looks like we've got some solidly approved minutes, so we can keep it moving. All right, we are going to open our meeting tonight with a special guest who's actually been here as a member of the consortium before, but has had a couple of role changes. And so now as we, you know, sort of push ahead into this new year, we also have a fresh face in the seat of Secretary of Education, although a face that I think a lot of us are very familiar with at the same time. So we wanted to invite Dr. Mark Holodick in this new role, who will be participating with the consortium, to say a few words in terms of his new position, the work of the department, and perhaps some perspective on the work that Reading is doing as well. So without any further ado, I'd just welcome Dr. Holodick, Secretary Holodick, to take the floor and take a few moments to let us hear from him.
Thank you, Tizzy. And if we could stop the screen share and put everyone on, Kelly, that would be great. So I could see.
Yeah, let's make sure we can actually see each other's faces as much as possible. Maybe if you can, put yourself on speaker view so you can see the secretary front and center.
Yeah, that's not necessary, but thank you. I don't know that anyone wants that, but, and Matt, great to see you. Great to see everyone. I think nearly, if not all of the participants today, I've either been in a meeting with recently, in person or virtually, and I think everyone knows me. So I'm going to skip the intro and instead just share with you some thoughts around priorities. So I've now been in the position for a month and have gathered a lot of information and have held a lot of meetings, even leading up to becoming secretary. I had a pretty long runway, as many of you know. It was a bit of an unusual circumstance where I had nearly 3 full months to gear up for the position, which was incredibly helpful. So I feel like I've hit the ground running, and I'm very pleased with, what we have been able to accomplish here in the first 4 weeks or so. I'm going to go through these priorities, and only the first one is actually in numerical order of importance. The rest are all just critically important, and one not more so than the other. The very first is, to no surprise, as secretary working with the governor's office, DPH, our 19 districts, charter schools, and many other groups, supporting the effort to work through COVID as safely as possible, make sensible decisions that keep students safe and in school and learning as best as possible. These are incredibly trying times. People are worn down. All of you know this. You're experiencing it yourselves, both personally and professionally, and it is hard. It's hard on everyone. So I think it's really important for the department to be a leader in working through all of this and providing resources, making sensible decisions, gathering information, getting input from leaders who are in the schools, from teachers, parents, and everyone else who is doing work with the kids. Yesterday, as an example, I started the day at Stubbs and had spent about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours there, looking at their preschool programming, kindergarten classrooms, dual generation center upstairs, which of course, at 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, there's not a whole lot of action in the adult center yet, but, and talking with the teachers and just seeing what challenges they've been facing, et cetera, really sort of puts things in perspective, because this was really the second tour of a building that I've done. And I went from there along with Jim Simmons over to HB DuPont and Red Clay and spent a couple of hours at HB. Again, having the opportunity to talk with kids and some teachers, visit some classrooms, and then ending the day in the afternoon over at Pulaski with Byard. And again, same sort of experience. And, I just want to emphasize that the department is playing a lead role, and, considering the announcement that the governor just made Monday regarding masks not being required via the state of emergency come the end of March, it'll be really, really important for me to continue working with the likes of Link, who was in this meeting, and the other 18 superintendents and charter leads. A number of them are in this meeting as well. Aaron Bass is here. Aaron and I were on a meeting from 3 until 4 before I jumped in my car in Dover, raced home for the meeting here. And that's what we're all kind of living right now, right? We're operating much differently than we have in the past, but the safety, security, and learning, keeping kids in school safely is priority number one. And, knock on wood, with a little bit of luck, we are certainly trending in the right direction. So other priorities, addressing academic success through opportunities. I think, so I would define this as as we emerge from this pandemic, we need interventions immediately that keep kids active and engaged. And so that I will be working with, our district leaders, charter leaders, to have opportunities for kids, especially in the summer months, that helps with whatever learning loss has taken place. But, equally important, I'm not just talking about academics. It's got to be things such as athletics, arts, getting kids in the state parks. We've got to be really innovative and thoughtful about how we engage kids. And going into next school year, of course, we will need many interventions tied to RTI and such to help kids catch up. But what's also important as we emerge from this pandemic will be systems. I'm going into classrooms and observing, it's obvious to me, tier 1 instruction can be improved. It needs our support. I think the masking and what kids have been through with COVID has really had an impact on tier 1 instruction. And so systems really have to be an area of concentration. So when I say systems, I'm talking about how we deliver content, what instruction looks like, where and when we deliver content and instruction, and how we measure growth and proficiency. All of those things tied to systems is going to be critically important. We have a tendency in education, when facing challenges, to turn to interventions, short-term fixes. But I think if COVID has taught us anything, it is that systems can be shifted pretty dramatically and we can still be successful. So if we want long-term change, it's not going to happen through interventions. It's going to happen through significant shifts in systems. The Wilmington Learning Collaborative is a major priority of mine. Clearly, it's a major priority of the governor's. I'm happy to say that last night, the Red Clay School Board voted unanimously to, support their superintendent coming to the table to negotiate an MOU that will impact our city schools in Wilmington, elementary and middle schools within the city. On Monday night, the same occurred with the Brandywine School District, and 2 weeks ago, Christina. So 21-0 in support of coming to the table and working on an MOU that'll make a difference for kids. So super excited about that. That will remain a priority. And I'm well aware that the heavy lifting is ahead of us, not necessarily behind us. But we've got the right people at the table. And I'll sort of go off on a side here. It's going to be critically important for us to engage with partners, higher ed, DSU, UD, and other potential partners. We have plenty of community-based organizations, faith-based organizations that can play a major role in impacting opportunities and outcomes for kids in those schools. I know all of you have seen the presentation. I think I was in the meeting before the holidays where John and Jim Simmons presented on the Wilmington Collaborative. So I won't go into great detail because you're already familiar with its tenets. At the end of the day, I'll describe it this way. We need our city schools to be the hubs of their community. Those buildings should be active throughout the school day and beyond, and on weekends. And that's not going to happen by leaning on the pre-K through 12 system alone. It's going to take significant partnerships and support from the mayor's office, the city council, these other organizations I just met or mentioned, pardon me. It's going to take, the adage, it's going to take a village, applies here. But again, I think with the relationships and reputations of the folks who are coming to the table, it has a better shot of working than anything I've seen in the past. So I'm excited about that. Another priority is diversifying and increasing our teacher and leader candidate pools. This is, If you look at the turnover rate or lack of retention rate in our highest need schools, not just in Wilmington, but across the state, it is problematic, because many of the things that, whether it's professional development or program implementation in these schools, you got to have people who are well trained. And if they're being trained and you're investing in them and then they're leaving, I mean, I think we all know, any basic economic class tells us that's not a wise or worthwhile investment. So we've got to do some innovative things around incentivizing teachers to stay. We got to make sure that our programs are preparing teachers really well to come in and work with all kids, but in particular kids in high need schools. And again, this is going to be work between us, UD, DSU, Del Tech, Wilmington U. There are a lot of really good things happening that have been advertised that you're familiar with. We got to grow what's working and then also be innovative to work around the edges with how do we recruit teachers to go into those high need schools and how do we retain them? And there are a number of people in the state. There's somebody in this meeting, and Gary Henry, who's done a lot of work in this area. We've met with, we being myself, John Sheehan, and Jim Simmons have met with Shelley Rouser as well. And there are some like really smart people who have done work in and around this area, and others who need to be brought to the table to, including legislators, mind you, that, and I know there are some legislators in this Zoom as well, that will play a pivotal role in being innovative and sort of putting our money where our mouth is regarding this important issue of diversifying our pool of candidates, and not just teachers, but also paras and importantly leaders. And then the final point I'll make is how important getting House Bill 198 right is. So, gosh, I guess it was Tuesday night, I was in a meeting invited by Marlene Saunders. This is the second one I've attended, deep dive into 198, let the truth be told. So I'm very familiar with the work that the department is required to do to prepare for supporting districts with House Bill 198. But I think what's equally important with this bill is listening to folks who have experiences that are a whole lot different than the folks that are doing the teaching in the building, right? So it's like a balanced approach, I would describe it as. We've got to learn from other people who have different experiences and also tap into the experts, many of which are in the K-2 through 12 system, but also higher ed. That has already begun to happen. So we have partnerships and contracts with both University of Delaware and Delaware State, where we're utilizing their experts to prepare curriculum and professional development support so that we are more accurately teaching our history. So I'll stop there, Tizzy. That's probably enough. And if anyone has any questions or comments.
No, it's great. It's great. And I'm sure we'll have a couple folks who might have comments or questions. So we're definitely going to open up to that for a few minutes. And I hope that, you'll enjoy sort of rejoining this crew, I think, from the early meetings that you participated in. When we were first getting off the ground and really just like working on how do we define educational equity and what are our priorities. I hope you'll find that we really have actually really operationalized that, I think, really well, including the fact that we had to really pivot during the pandemic to focus on, okay, what are the things that we know are already kind of out there that we can really lean on and bring resources forward for Wilmington kids and start to move some needles. So obviously we'll talk about a little bit further in the agenda. I think we've had a great deal of success because we have an amazing set of folks who participate in this consortium and have helped us to do that. So we'll talk a little bit about that and some of the alignments, I think, that we hope we'll see in the next couple of years. But so welcome back. And any questions or comments from the room for the secretary? No? Maybe folks are going to be shy today. I don't see any hands yet. I guess you said it all. And as you said, you've also been doing a great deal of meeting with probably every single person who's on this Zoom right now. So to
Yeah,
your
I think
credit.
I've talked the most. The only other final point I would make, I'm really excited about how schools and districts are preparing to use this growing pot of opportunity funds, which, you know, can be accredited to the Reading Commission. I mean, those are additional resources that are going to grow, that have provide the potential for schools and districts to do some of the things we've been talking, I just mentioned, right, in terms of priorities. So kudos to you and the progress that you've made since I've left Reading, and I look forward to participating again. Thanks, Tizzy.
Yep, no problem. Oh, I do see a hand now. We've got Ms. Tika Hartsock who would like to ask a question
Hi, Tika.
or make a comment. Sorry, whatever you want to.
No worries. Hi, Mark. Nice seeing you again.
You too.
I like hearing that you were sharing about the opportunities for the summer. But one thing I'm curious is about, and I actually just brought this up in another meeting that I was in last night, is that there's a lot of folks that are speaking about what's good for families in the community or what people need. But as you're planning some of these summer programming opportunities, how do you plan to engage families in what's appropriate for what the needs of their children are? And
Yeah, well, families know best, along with folks who are in their, working with their kids in their schools. I know last year, in just reviewing things that districts did last summer, I think there's an opportunity to offer some similar programming with much higher attendance and participation. So if you're not aware, districts tried to do some of this, summer planning and opportunity providing to students. Attendance, generally speaking, was lower than they had hoped for, but I think it was tied directly to the pandemic. I think people were apprehensive and quite frankly scared about sending their kids back into schools and in larger groups. I think I'm hopeful that by the end of this school year that angst will subside and districts can be really strategic about how they're communicating opportunities for summer learning to their families, in particular to high needs populations, kids that need it the most. And I think we're all aware that there are plenty of opportunities for kids that families who have means can afford and have access to. We've got to make sure around equity that opportunities are being provided to the kids that are often left out, and I think there are a number of ways to get at that. So I know it seems relatively early for those conversations, but creating those kind of opportunities, whether you want to call them camps or extended learning opportunities, it takes time to plan. There are some really good models out there, both nationally and models that already exist in Delaware that districts have done. So we just need to grow those, and we need to be able to communicate hard numbers. We should track it and be able to communicate just how many kids are engaged in these after school programs and summer programs. And then one final thing we should be able to do is show growth in learning when kids do participate in these extracurricular programs.
in the meeting that I referenced last night, one of our presenters had said that they had a conversation with Secretary Bunting and recently, and that she had shared about all the vacancies this summer, and that a lot of seats were empty. But I also work in inner city school, and while that increase may be due to the pandemic, I would say that that was still happening before the pandemic, as well as with some of the after school programs. So knowing that, I'm a little curious as to if there's anything that your office has identified to do differently between what they did do last year, outside of just informing families of what opportunities are coming down the pipeline. So what I would like to see in terms of engagement is actually engaging families in the planning of those opportunities. and creating those opportunities versus then just going to them and saying, here's a menu that we want you to pick from, or that your school is recommending for you to pick from. But
Yeah, I think it's a point well taken. It's hard for the department to do. I mean, Jim Simmons' Office of Innovation and Equity, some of his team members have built relationships in certain schools where they, I think, can influence students and families, but the average DOE employee does not. We just don't have those kind of relationships. We have some people within the department that do. I certainly don't. The Secretary of Ed isn't likely to walk into a high need school and convince a parent that they should take advantage of a after school program or summer program. But there are people in those schools, of course, who can, whether it be the teacher or an academic advisor or a dean or the principal for that matter. So I think we have to be really thoughtful and strategic about how we engage with families. I think that was the term you used, Tika, and that's exactly what it takes. Sometimes it's a little bit of positive arm bending so that the student and family takes advantage of an opportunity.
thank you.
Tizzy, you're on mute.
Tizzy, you're muted.
Thank you. I was saying all kinds of brilliant things. Missed it. Sorry. I was thanking Tika for her wonderful observation and welcoming Maria to offer her thoughts.
But is that me, Maria Matos?
It sure does.
Okay, hi, thank you. Well, I just needed to plug in the governor's Wilmington Learning Initiative because it falls right in track with what oh my God, I can never say her name, just said about getting parents, communities, teachers involved. So this Learning Collaborative initiative does exactly that. It gives that autonomy to the schools and the school leaders and the school teachers and the parents and the community to make the decisions that these children need. So it's right in line with what you was asking. And I'm glad to hear that Mark is supporting the initiative. I think it's about time that we take a calculated risk. Nothing else seems to be working.
Thank you, Tika. Or sorry, thank you, Maria, for that. It was Tika that was speaking prior.
Tika.
I think you're both your points very well taken about the importance of engaging the community, which I think is also a strong value for this consortium. And there's certainly opportunities for that through the Wilmington Learning Collaborative. So great points. And I don't think we have any other hands. So if not, I think we'll move on to the next part of the agenda. Thank you again, Secretary Holodick, and stick around. We have a few more interesting highlights, I think, coming up. I'm going to throw it to my wonderful co-chair, Matt Den, to do the first bullet on this list and talk a little bit about pre-K funds and wraparound services. So following up on our initial execution on our priorities that we're seeing in the past year. Go ahead, Matt.
Great. I'll try to be brief, in part because I think we may have talked about the pre-K a little bit at the last meeting, but just wanted to give folks a current update on the actual awards of the grants that were funded in the current year's budget as a result of our recommendations. There are 4 pre-K programs that received funds through a competitive bid process for the ability to, in the case of each of them, change half-day programs to full-day programs for a total of 110 children, all of whom are in the feeder patterns for what would be high poverty elementary school kindergarten programs in the city of Wilmington. So the short-term result of the implementation of that recommendation is going to be 110 kids getting a significantly expanded amount of pre-K services who are going to be showing up in kindergarten programs for these schools that had been a focus for us. We also had made a recommendation for funds for 3 schools who had student populations above a designated low income level to receive funds for wraparound services before school, after school, summer, and also the establishment or expansion of in-school student health centers And there was also a competitive grant process for that. Through the 3 schools that received the competitive grant were Bancroft, Bayard, and Kumba Academy. And they're offering very different programs, but all of them consistent with the specifications that we had laid out for the legislature. So good news is a lot of good things happening with the funds that were allocated. We also have had an opportunity, and I think we may come back to this when we're talking about the work group reports. We now have an opportunity to sort of see how they played out and the extent to which the programs look like we had hoped they would look when we made the recommendations, and the extent to which we aren't quite getting to where we want to be. So there's going to be an opportunity, which I think Senator Lockman is going to talk about in a minute, to make some recommendations to the Joint Finance Committee as far as tailoring the epilogue language for these grants the next time around. And one consistent theme with both grants, with the pre-K grant and with the 3 schools that received the wraparound services grant, was the fact that uncertainty about the continuation of the funding was an obstacle for them in terms of making proposals to bring on full-time staff, making proposals to make significant upfront investments into programs. So that's something that had been a priority for us before, and likely will be even more of a priority going forward, is to try to have as much of this funding in the operating budget as possible, so that these programs, future bidders on these programs can submit their proposals with some confidence that these are going to be long-term programs where they can hire people, make investments, et cetera. And I think we have some good news on that front that is maybe a good segue into Senator Lockman's report on the governor's budget.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. Did anyone have any questions on pre-K? We can come back to it after we go through all the bullets. How about that? If anyone has any particular questions, but we do have further good news. Last year, as many of you may remember, we had good news in terms of being able to secure a significant amount of primarily one-time funds, but a little more than $10 million overall to pursue the various recommendations of our work groups to one degree or another. So that was great. But of course, you hopefully remember one of the big points of consternation that we had was that, of course, when we're trying to stand up really effective programming through our schools and for our students, being able to anticipate that kind of consistency is going to be really important, and being able to do that effectively. So we really wanted at the time to move as much of that into the recurring budget as possible, and we're able to move some of it, particularly to back up our pre-K recommendations. And then, with the intention of following through, and as we talked about, looking at what kind of outcomes we would see from those programs and priorities, in the hopes that we'd be able to build on and make sustainable some of those efforts. So for those of you who watch the budget reporting and that whole process, it's, the first thing up is the governor's budget, the governor's recommended budget, or GRB, being presented as we go into what we are currently in right now, which is the first month of active joint finance activity of reviewing agency budgets, as well as the governor's recommended budget. So what you would have seen if you're watching that was particular attention to educational initiatives, both the Wilmington Learning Collaborative, as we have heard about, but this year, a new presence in the governor's recommended budget is support for our recommendations through the Reading Consortium to the tune of $12.8 million, which is great. Definitely closer to our dream number that I think left our recommendations with when we made them a little over a year ago. So to put a little bit of a finer point on that, that's $10.2 million is in the operating budget, so funds that would recur. And then 2.6 million is designated in one-time funds. And that's about the level of detail that we have at, at this stage. We haven't necessarily had further conversations about very specific ways that those funds are going to be distributed and allocated and focused. Obviously, it will be on the items that we initially recommended, which continue to be a priority and have needs for investment, which I think is also probably a good segue to our last bullet in terms of some of the ongoing work that we expect to be able to do, supporting that ultimately the governor's recommended budget is what the Joint Finance Committee votes to approve. That we'll be able to have some agency, I think, and ongoing participation in making sure that we're actually staying true to the recommendations that we've made and making sure that implementation, reflects the values and intention behind them. So $12.8 million in the governor's recommended budget, I think, is the bottom line, and very good news. And I think just more support and sustainability for the vision that has come from all the hard work of our working groups here. So kudos to everyone for that. Obviously that we have a little bit more to do to make sure that becomes a total reality, but it's definitely us heading in the right direction to make sure that we're getting the resources where they need to be for our students and for our educators in the city of Wilmington. Matt, did you want to add anything to that or help me? Actually, let's go back so we can talk through this. Actually, Matt, you want to introduce, do you want to talk a little bit through the third bullet?
Sure. I also just wanted to thank Secretary Geisenberger, who is the one who, several months ago had encouraged us to come to the budget hearings for the Office of Management and Budget and sort of make our case. And I have to admit, I was a little bit skeptical how much of a difference that was going to make. But Senator Lockman testified at the hearing, and she asked for $12.8 million to be put into the governor's recommended budget. And that's exactly what got put in. So I just wanted to thank him for, encouraging us to do that. And thank Senator Lockman for obviously being pretty persuasive, because it's the amount that's in. We'd like for all of it to be in operating, but for even 10 point something million out of 12.8 to, from the get-go be in operating, that's just a hugely significant development. And I just wanted to say thanks to Rick, and obviously thanks to the governor for including it in his budget.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I just want to back that up. Thanks so much, Secretary Geisenberger, for being that voice that pushed us, and we're delighted.
So the good problem or the challenge, I should say, that leaves us with, Senator Lockman was saying, was that, we now have some confidence that, at least $10.5 million is going to be in the operating budget. And that's going to address one of the major concerns that had been raised by providers in terms of responding to the last round of RFPs. But we want to also make sure that we've done everything possible between now and when these RFPs get put out to ensure that the next round of proposals and the next round of grant awards, produces programs that look, very much like what the working groups had hoped for when they made their recommendations. So, given the tight timeframes that are involved, our suggestion was that the chairs of the work groups that had generated these recommendations that resulted in these funds try to work with their work group members to come up with some more specific recommendations, changes, tailoring, et cetera, for how these funds are going to be reflected in the next RFP, so that we can get the optimal results going forward. So I think we're going to have, I don't know if this is the time or if it's coming later, but
coming right up.
Okay, yeah, we were going to have a motion to have the consortium delegate that responsibility to the chairs of the respective work groups to do that for the recommendations that had come from their work groups. But again, this is all this is all great. And it's really just, when you look back 12 months, just a huge step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we really are making some great progress, and I'm just really proud of everyone. And hopefully also, another thing to do with this next motion coming up, is just us showing I hope our ability to learn and grow. I know we had some hiccups along the way with our last iteration of bringing some of these funds to ground. So we just want to make sure that we're able to preserve the integrity of the recommendations, because we have some very real resources going to make them a reality, and we want to make sure we do it right. Just as the Secretary spoke about House Bill 198, we feel very much that way about our recommendations. So I think I saw briefly Secretary Geisberger's hand. I don't want to call you out if you don't want to speak, but
it's fine. I was actually trying to hit the applause. When Matt thanked the governor, I tried to hit the applause thing.
There we go. Yes.
Didn't do it right. I must have raised my hand.
At the end of the day, it is his recommended budget, and so we have to make sure we.
Exactly. Well, that would be my comment, which is, it's only the governor's recommended budget. Ultimately, the Joint Finance Committee gets to decide. So.
Correct. All right, great. Well, so I think the next slide is going to give us the language of the motion, and that we're going to be voting on, and that would be for the Reading Consortium to delegate to the chairs of its work groups responsibility for working with relevant state agencies in the General Assembly to refine program language, RFP language, and budget epilogue language arising from recommendations that originated within their respective working groups. I would welcome, I guess, a member of the consortium to indicate a desire to make that motion, and a second. And then we'll go ahead and do a roll call.
So move.
Thank you, Maria Matos. So moved. Do I have a second?
This is Tika, I second.
All right, Tika Hartsock with the second. And I think for this one, Kelly, we should probably do the full roll call. I know we have a few designees tonight, so you guys might hear some different names in the mix. Hopefully we are ready to do that.
It's actually going to be Haley.
Oh, Haley, sorry. Yay, Haley, go for it.
Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Okay, great. Roll call. We have Aaron Bass,
Yes.
Longfellow for Dan Shelton,
Yes.
Danye Woods, Darrell Green, Ernesto Lopez.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Hanifa has made it on, so either Hanifa Shabazz or Gwen Angelette.
This is Gwen Angelette. Hanifa's not here yet, so I'm voting her proxy. I'm voting yes.
Haley, we
Sorry,
might be
did I hear that?
Oh, Haley, we might be losing you a little bit here.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it was a little cut off when Gwen was talking. It was probably me.
I can take over, Haley. I've got
Sorry
the
about
rest.
that.
James DeChain is not here. Emily Falcon for Jeff Menzer.
Yes.
Shanita Reynolds for Joseph Jones.
I think it's Shanta.
Shanta, sorry.
Abstain.
Okay. Is Catherine Bradley here?
No.
No. Lynn Kohler,
Yes.
Margie Lopez Wade,
Yes.
Maria Matos,
Yes.
Matthew Den,
Yes.
Mayor Brzezicki,
Yes.
Representative Smith,
Yes.
Representative Chikocha here. Noel Picara,
Yes.
Ray Jones Avery, Laura.
Yes, for Ray Jones Avery.
Thank you, Ray. Deb Stevens for Stephanie Ingram.
Yes.
Ted Blunt is not here. Tika Hartsock.
Yes.
Senator Lockman.
Yes.
Is William Clark here? No. Xavier Mills.
Yes, for Xavier. Thank you.
All right, we have received a number of correct number of votes.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Kelly. All right, so the motion carries, and you all will be hearing from Matt and I as we work to advance this action item. So thanks all for your patience. And I think that moves us into work group updates. Yay. So we are going to give each group an opportunity to, I think primarily it's the settlement work group tonight, right? We have very brief updates from our other groups, I believe. Is that correct? Okay. So we're going to start with the settlement work group, which is substantive, and then I think probably work social determinants as well. And the other two will just give very brief status checks. So I would like to invite Aaron Bass and Chuck Longfellow to take the floor and go ahead and walk us through what you all have been working on.
We've been working on a lot, and thank you
Yes.
for having us here, and also glad to see so much progress with the leadership of the Writing Consortium and education. So we appreciate all the work, everyone here. So for the settlement work group, we have submitted feedback for the independent funding assessment RFP that went out, and a lot of that was also incorporated. The independent funding assessment RFP was released on February 7th. Definitely check it out. And deadline for response is 2/15, so coming up next week. Reviewed the educational equity settlement progress report as well. And our next meeting is on March 28th, 2022. So I actually want to jump into the next slide, which is we have been doing this for just over a year. So after settlement took place, the Writing Consortium passed the settlement work group. And so we decided to do a progress report with our members. And this is the rubric that we are using just to talk about what's taking place with the settlement. So the two different key areas are implementation status and then the alignment status. And so we're going to talk about both of those issues tonight. I'm going to break down implementation, and Chuck's going to break down the alignment. You can see the indicators there and that they're strong, minimal, insufficient, or not started. And we'll talk about these as well. By the way, it's also explain what the educational equity is there as well. So let's jump in. The first slide. Thank you. Second slide. Right here we have the actions taken. So the opportunity funding. Senate Bill 56 was passed and signed into law, and so that's going to increase up to $60 million. For that, we have it as a green. The governor and state legislature moved proactively to codify the opportunity fund and implement the funding increase stipulated in the settlement. So we're very pleased with that progress and that it's still moving on. K-3 basic spec ed funding, and again, that was also strong with our green. Moved proactively to codify the K-3 basic spec ed unit ahead of the settlement deadlines. And so for the next one, we have the early childhood. And so for FY 2022 budget, ECAP remained at $6.1 million. And so that one rated as a minimal. So it met the threshold for the settlement. Next one, please. Next slide. Yep. Teacher recruitment and retention. So that is to set aside $4 million in the FY 23 budget. That has also been recommended and is there. And so that met a minimal threshold for the settlement. The ombudsperson program was funded for $1 million. And again, hit the minimal for that with the RFP awarded. The program will begin during FY 2022 as stipulated. And then I'm just going through the implementation status report, and then just so everyone's aware, then Chuck will go through the alignment status. Equity statement, the equity statement requirement was implemented on time. And then lastly, the independent funding assessment, which we gave feedback on and has also been incorporated. Is currently on track to be completed by the end of January 2024. So that is the progress update on the implementation status. We're gonna go back up one slide. And Chuck's gonna take us through the alignment status.
All right, so it's one thing to have done, made the motion, but we need to look and see, is it aligned to what the settlement said? And then we're the Reading Consortium, so is it aligned to our goals and values? And we have an eye on, what impact is it having or has it had? So alignment status, even though the opportunity funding is wonderful, it's a great thing to have. It's the icing on the cake that we talk about in our work group. So we have made a note that, it's great to have it, but the teachers, administrators, and staff that are working with high needs students, English learners, students from low income families are already working hard. They're working harder. And students with disabilities, of course, are working harder than just about everybody else. And now we're getting money and we have all these guide rails and requirements and reports and plans we have to do. So, maybe we could take a look at that. And then another note to make about the Opportunity Fund is that there is a evaluation that was done, but kind of it's the funny, not funny joke that we have here in our work group is that really the outcome of that assessment is more research is needed. And so that's something we have to look at. That's why this isn't agreeing on the alignment status side, although the governor and legislature is ahead of the ball in the implementation of this, because I think last year they actually had allocated more than what was required at that time due to the settlement. So you'll see yellows going down to K3 basic. It's so far so good. It's being implemented. We need to make sure it has the impact that we intended to have. Early childhood, same thing. We just want to make sure that as it gets implemented, that it has a great impact. And so we'll green it when we see it. So help us see it if you see it out there. Okay. Next slide, please. When you see a gray, it's because it's not really there yet. We're monitoring implementation, and we give that a yellow so far. Yellow's not bad. Yellow's okay. Ombudsperson, it's the same kind of thing where, okay, the RFP has been awarded. We haven't seen the work yet. We haven't seen the outcome yet. We haven't seen the article and all the online news sources saying, wow, this is a wonderful program and it's making changes for kids and their families. So, you do that and we'll turn you in, we'll give you a green. Equity statement is one of my darlings because, I harped on that early on when it came out, and really the equity statement language is copied straight out of the settlement. Okay, you met that standard, but is it really having any kind of an impact? Well, I think we're going to keep it on orange because I don't even know how it can have impact or align to what we're trying to do with equity. I don't see it changing anything with equity. So that's how we're thinking right now on the progress report. I think it's a really cool tool for us to take a look and take stock of where we've come so far. And I think that, if the other groups could maybe take this kind of thing too, to look at, their initiatives, and if they want to add column or add rows for their stuff in their slides, that's cool too. So I hope you guys all understand what we're doing and like and follow it. And I don't mean like follow it on social media, but or like it on social media, but like it and follow it in this presentation. So thank you. And I think that is our last slide as a work group.
I think so. Yeah. Thank you guys. Great job. I think it's an effective framework. I did get a chance to look at it prior to tonight, so that probably helps me a little bit. But I think it's very clear, to help us think about where we're actually meeting the road. So I just wanted to express my appreciation for you all, demonstrating the ways that we want to, actually pursue being sort of fully accountable and transparent to the work that's most important to us. So thank you for that. And let's see if we have any questions or comments about the report or that work from any members of the consortium. I don't see any yet. If not, if people just need to digest that a little bit, of course, you know where to find Chuck and Aaron, or you can throw your comments and questions into the chat. And and we'll move forward. And also thanks, this is helpful to me because there's a couple of items where, you know, obviously we need to kind of watchdog it for the budget that we're working on right now. So thank you for that. All right, I think we can move along. So social determinants work group has a couple of updates for us. And
Again, I'll try this again if it cuts out. Sorry.
and I think Matt's going to assist you as well, right? So if you cut out, I think he can pinch it for you. So go ahead, Haley.
Sure, I'll be quick. So the social determinants work group is starting to develop an equity data dashboard, which they got the funding for in fiscal year 22. The February and March work group meetings will focus on planning for the dashboard. At the February 15th meeting, we will also hear from Representative Kristen Griffith about legislation she's working on. And I think so those are really the main updates. And Matt talked about this a little in the beginning of the meeting, but I'll turn it to him to discuss monitoring some grant outcomes, gearing up for the next grant cycle, and upcoming meeting with the ECAP Head Start directors.
Yeah, I will do that. If Ray wants to jump in, then I welcome her to. But we covered this a little bit already. Ray has already gotten started on part of this effort that I mentioned to try to figure out how we could better tailor these RFPs and the epilogue language going forward in order to get the outcomes that we're hoping for. And she has scheduled a meeting for us with a number of ECAP providers, I think next week, where we'll have an opportunity to hear from them directly as to what challenges they might face in creating new slots. And we are also going to be talking to folks at the Department of Education and really anyone else that we can get some input from in order to address that challenge. And basically what the goal is we were very successful in getting a number of existing half-day slots expanded to full day. And what we were trying to figure out is on top of that, how can we actually get some new slots created so that children who are not currently receiving any level of services among this group that we've targeted can start receiving them. So that's the goal, and the work has already begun.
Great. All right, thank you for that. I don't know if Ray wanted to add anything. I know I think she might be in transit, but again, Ray Jones Avery and Jeff Menzer have really, I think, done a great job shepherding this group as well. I'm very excited to start to see, the equity data dashboard coming to life. I think that's really going to be very interesting. So any questions on social determinants works? All right. That's good. No, not seeing any questions there. And then I think lastly, we just have a status update on educators and governance. We don't have robust presentations here, but they are both at work. I think in all of our prior meetings, we've pretty much said something similar, or several of our prior meetings, we said something similar. The educators work group has had some shifts in terms of there being remaining funds from RFPs that came out of their recommendations and new opportunities from within our one-time funds. And so we have tasked them with creating a spending plan to meet their goals and the intent of their recommendations. So that's just ongoing work. And when we have something to report on that, we will let everybody know. And then as we mentioned, Noelle, did you want to add anything to that? I know we just said we'd do a quick status update, but you're of course very free to add if you like.
No, I think that covered it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for your work. And for the governance work group, first Representative Nandu Chukwucha initiated that. We transitioned from one work group to this new, newly formed working group. And he selected as his co-chair County Councilman Jay Street. And so that has been defined. And they are now working on their own work plan in terms of what comes next for redistricting. I think we know that the first and foremost action step that's needed is to essentially to reissue, to rerun a bill that renews the powers associated with creating a redistricting plan and allowing the Reading Consortium to do that work in a way that can actually be executed. So that's something, a deliverable that work group will be working on in the short term. And I think we'll be hearing more from them as well. So the redistricting conversation will continue and is currently undergoing that renewal. So that's just a quick status update on what those two groups are up to. And we look forward to hearing more in the coming months. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, or concerns on those updates or any other updates that have come up into this point? Because I believe we are just about at our final slide. Okay, don't see any hands. So I think the next thing is just to update when we meet next. Is in April. So our next bi-monthly meeting is April 7th. Again, our 2-hour period, and we'll look forward to further updates on some of the progress that's been spoken to tonight. Some more news around budget action and those work groups bringing some of their projects to fruition as well. So April 7th, we will see you again virtually here on our Zoom. And I think with that, I think we're at public comment. So I think we mostly have consortium members and working group members, but if anyone is here who is a member of the public who would like to offer a comment, now's the time to raise your hand or make your voice known, and we will give you 3 minutes to speak. Okay. All right, seeing none. Managed to give you guys half of your time back. So, all right, no, I'm not seeing anyone volunteering for public comment. So I think we are ready to close out. Oh, hold on one moment. Senator Lopez, I know you're on the phone, so you can't raise your hand, but of course you absolutely can make a comment. And so can any member make any final comment that you'd like to make before we close out.
Thank you, Senator Lockman. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you and to thank all the committee members, and just really for folks that have not been able to tune into the JFC meetings thus far. I know that this particular conversation in regards to the work that's being done by all of you and all of us in Reading is a very bipartisan effort. It is being supported by legislators up and down the state on both sides of the aisle. And I just wanted to make sure that it's important for everyone to know that. And again, I'm very proud to work alongside Senator Lockman and help carry this ball down forward in the General Assembly. But we've got a really good group of people, again, on a bipartisan basis, who are really focused on this issue. And I got to tell you, it means a great deal to me personally. And I just wanted to share that. So thank you, Senator. And thank you all for your time this evening.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. Thanks very much. And thanks for being a part of the consortium with us. Okay, any other comments?
I just wanted to mention, this is Maria Matos.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, if you happen to be walking by 4th and Van Buren,
yes,
going up towards 10th, take a look to your right, and there will be, come 2023, probably October of 2022, we can start moving in. There will be an additional 78 slots, 30 new jobs, and a beautiful district, or at least a corner of it.
Absolutely.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for advancing that. I'm really excited to see what comes there with the new Early Learning Center. And thanks for everything that you do in Wilmington. So, okay. Oh, right on, Shelley. That's where you grew up. It is. It's going to be hopefully it'll be a nice catalyst for more like that. So always leading the way. All right, open for any further member comments. Okay, great. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, as I always say, I'm really proud of this consortium and everyone who's engaged, whether as a full consortium member or the many, many folks we have on working groups who are doing all of this thought work that we, get to stand on the shoulders on and, seek the resources to support. So it's been an exciting couple of years that we were still able to pull off, I think, so much good work, even in the midst of all this pandemic turmoil, and looking forward to seeing what else we can do as we begin to emerge from that. So well done. And I'm sure I'll see everyone in one form or another before April, but see you again here in this meeting on April 7th. Okay. All right, I think that's it. Motion to adjourn, and we don't really need to do that, but we can. All right, good night.